Yeah, talk to us about a film scoring project that you were working on for an Emerson student. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, the project is for a movie that he's doing. I'm not sure about the title yet, but the overall concept is a palindrome. And if for anybody who doesn't know what a palindrome is, it's something that can be the same backwards as it is forward. So, for example, the word Hannah can be the same backwards as it is forward. So the concept of the movie is that there's a center point in the movie of which I guess the movie is. I haven't actually seen it yet, but from talking to the film director, the movie is going to be played backwards at this point, going to be kind of mirrored, so that the end. And somehow he's telling me the script writer is like a genius, so it's gonna sound. They're gonna be saying things when it's played backwards that will make sense in the movie. And the overall concept of the movie is that there's a couple in the beginning and they break up, and then apparently at some point in the other half of the movie, the mirrored part, he's sad, and then I don't know if they get back together or something's happy is going to happen at the end. So when I thought of it, originally I wanted to be able to play my music backwards too against the movie, but that is physically impossible. I have discovered, due to tendencies of instruments, whenever you play like a piano, you hit it and you have an attack and then you have a decay, so it kind of looks something like this, like a V kind of out, and it's physically impossible to make that the same thing backwards. You can't do that because when you hit a piano note, it sounds like this forward. It sounds like da. But when you play that backwards, it's raw. So I'm going at the concept of that actually when you look at the music, physically look at the music, it's going to be a mirror image of each other at a certain point. And the great thing about this, though, is that this idea of kind of doing this is essential from a class that I took called Counterpoint 2, and it's canon writing, which is a very similar idea to what I'm doing right now, taking a measure and putting it at the end. So right now I've only got the first half of it that I'm working on, so then, because I haven't actually seen the film yet, but this is the idea, and I'm going to mirror that image at the end. And this is kind of how it goes. So that's an overall rough sketch of the product that I'm going to be producing or going to be writing for the film student. Actually, the process of which I went about it was I actually made this MIDI file first, and I'm actually just kind of transcribing it now into my notation system. So, yeah, that's that. But that's a product at the start of that's a film composition at the beginning of the process.
Can you take us through the whole process of finding film students, working with their vision, translating their vision and ideas into musical ideas, the negotiating back and forth, all the way to the end product?
Well, let's start with the first question of finding people to actually work with. You have to just always be on your toes as a film composer. Like, even if you're at a party, especially going to Berkeley, like, if you're at a party, if you're just out walking around, if you're hanging out with friends. We have something called Film Scoring Club here at Berkeley, which I'm not a part of, but I should be. It's a great networking opportunity. The Jason Parks, the head of the Film Scoring Club, definitely is innovative on getting Berkeley film composers out to film students in the neighboring communities. And Boston, thank God that Berkeley is in Boston and next to so many colleges, because there is opportunity to meet film students and compose their films. With the Emerson project that we just looked at, I actually met the student on Halloween, coming home from a Halloween party that I just randomly started talking to. And sometimes that's just how it is. So I found that when finding film composers, sometimes it can be a random person that you just meet, but the best thing is to usually compose for your friends. You want to get friends with film composers, because once you start composing their films and they like your style, or they like that you are compatible to their films, or they like your professionalism about it, usually they're going to keep calling you again. So the idea is that usually film scores tend to go with similar film directors because they work really well together.
Translating the director's vision into...
Well, sometimes it's really hard because directors know absolutely nothing about music usually. They just know the same thing as a common person of like what they know what they want the emotion to be. Sometimes film scores or film directors are nice enough to put something called a temp track over a film, which is like generally music, already made music over a film. And actually, what's that? The Space Odyssey movie? The entire score for that movie was actually scored by someone, but they dropped it at the last minute and decided to use the temp track. So there, it's sometimes it can be nice and sometimes it can be bad, but overall, film composers have to understand that usually film directors do not know as much as they do about music, and a lot of times I've found from other people and from my experiences, film composers just kind of let you loose. And for instance, this project that I worked on with my friend who's a film student at UW-Milwaukee, Kyle Probst, this movie is called Sidna, and this is a film I did for him. And the overall start of the composition was just as I showed you in the Emerson project, just experimenting on my piano. These are all the different sequences I have. These little, this program's called Digital Performer, and it's really, really good it's hard to use, but it's very, very good for film composition. And these little things are markers that I hit certain cues that I feel are important in the movie. The movie instrumentation, I use clarinet, bassoon, horn, piano, some strings. But overall, he just kind of let me go on it, and so it was really nice to be able to just work on my own on this film and just kind of create my own ideas. But the problem is sometimes, like, afterwards, for instance, like, my film director that I was working with, he didn't give me any sort of direction, and he liked most of what I did, but there were some parts that he didn't like, and that's the frustrating part of being a film composer. That's the difficult part about sometimes working with film composers, is that they don't know what they want, and you give them a product that you're very proud of, but then all of a sudden they start knowing what they want, and then they start knowing that they don't want something that you already did and already finished. But you have to it's hard sometimes as the film composer to, like, taint your music to what the film director wants, but you have to remember it's their product overall, and, like, I mean, you are putting your name on it, but you're getting hired by the film director, so you have to do what they want.
So for that example in particular, what did Kyle say? Like, what did he say to you when he first talked about the score?
All he said was that he wanted a minimalist approach to the score, because as most film directors, they don't want the music getting in the way of the film, but, like, a lot of times it's just a misunderstanding sometimes, like, because they've been watching this film for so long without any music in it, and it's kind of their baby, and they kind of can't imagine it with music in it. They can't imagine the possibility because they're focusing so much on what's being seen on screen and, like, the sound effects. They're not really thinking too much about the music. And, I mean, I really tried to stick to his minimalist approach. I really tried to not use more than 2 or 3 instruments at the same time. Mostly because the storyline is kind of skewed, but the character in the movie is a very simple character. He's a man out in the middle of Sidna, Michigan, just chilling in a cabin by himself. So, I mean, you don't want to overcomplicate things with too many instruments and too many things going on when the movie is not the same. Like, when the movie is a very simple movie, you want to translate it with simple instrumentation, simple composition, things like that.
Can we focus on one piece you're currently working on? What's the name of the piece?
The piece that I'm working on for this film is, I'm trying to do kind of the film composer for the Emerson one wants it to sound like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and here's like a little sample of what that sounds like. So, after listening to this and understanding the overall mood of what the film director wants, I understand that he wants simple instrumentation. He wants some electronic sounds, but like very simple electronic sounds. In this composition, there's just a bass and like some sort of electronic strings over it and a piano. So, like, and it's like a upright plucked bass. And the piece that I'm working on right now, it's not, the thing that varies between that I didn't like the swing feel of it, because in the Palindrome movie, the swing feel's not going to translate very well into the sad parts. So I just kept it with the straight 8th note feel. And then, as you guys heard before, this is a part of the piece that very rough sketch, but you can hear how I kind of took the concept of like the temp track that my film director gave me and tried to create something original from it. But it's very helpful for a film composer, for a film director, to give them a temp track, because it leaves a lot of questions out of the way, like what instrumentation should I use, what feel, how fast, how slow. When a film director gives you an idea, it just makes the process go along a lot faster.
Just one last little question in this segment. What would you say the difference is between an orchestrator and an arranger?
An orchestrator and an arranger. The main difference between an orchestrator and an arranger is more closer to a composer than an orchestrator is. An arranger usually will be given a piece by a group that wants to play it, like an orchestra or like men's choir or an a cappella group, anything like that. They'll be given, for instance, let's say like for Glee. Glee is a great example of arranging. Let's say next week they wanted to do they've been doing Queen or anything like that. The arranger for there will arrange all the parts going on there. So it's a lot more close to composition. You get to choose the instrumentation, kind of. You get to choose where how it modulates and things. So, but what an orchestrator does is, a lot of times on very, very big projects, such as like a John Williams, score for like Star Wars, he'll have an orchestrator, and what he does is he writes a piano reduction score, which is just one line of piano, but it has all of the parts for the composition that he wants written in concert key, and above it he writes what kind of instruments he would like to be played there, and the orchestrator takes the reduced score, and then from there takes the parts and literally copies and pastes them into the music, because when a film composer like John Williams really doesn't have time to sit there and orchestrate out the music for an hour and a half film, that's why you hire an orchestrator, somebody who literally organizes his ideas into actual actual physical composition.